错的黑夜手一盏孤灯。
A netizen shared that a few days ago, the White House press secretary, when being asked about Biden's policy toward the Chinese Communist Party, she mentioned a doctrine called strategic patience. Speaking of the definition of strategic patience, according to an article published in the academic journal North Korean Review, the Obama administration pursued a policy of strategic patience on North Korea, which is basically, quote, a dual-track policy that keeps engagement open for its good behavior while seeking to impose sanctions for its bad behavior. The White House press secretary explained that, quote, Beijing is now challenging our security, prosperity, and values in significant ways that require a new U.S. approach. And this is one of the reasons that we want to approach this with some strategic patience, and we want to conduct reviews internally. According to experts, even though the press secretary announced that the U.S. policy toward China would not change, the strategic patience policy pursued by the Obama administration in its relationship with North Korea was so passive that it consequently allowed Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program. Some netizens were concerned about Biden's policy toward China and commented that before Biden took office, my initial thought was that even though Biden would not be able to entirely reverse the Trump administration's policy toward the Chinese Communist Party, it is no doubt that Biden would be much more pro-engagement. And it appears that many of the policies that Biden has taken so far, ever since he took office, have collectively proved this point. A netizen shared, citing a veteran of the State Department, a purge has taken place in the State Department. Now, nearly all levels of career bureaucrats and diplomats have been changed to those that worked in the Obama administration. Now, the composition of the State Department and the key foreign policy team has essentially been reversed to the same cohort before Trump took office. A netizen shared that right after Biden took office, he asked the former CEO of the U.S. Agency for Global Media, Michael Peck, to resign. Peck was nominated by President Trump. In addition, Stephen Yates, who has only served 30 days as the president of Radio Free Asia, was also forced to resign. A netizen shared that recently, according to investigation by Graphica that was published on Friday, a pro-Huawei network of inauthentic Twitter accounts began a campaign last month, railing against Belgium's recent decision to limit 5G technology vendors' high risk. According to Graphica researcher Ben Nimmo, this campaign represents a new arc in the story about influence campaigns online. He said, quote, it's business rather than politics. It's not one country targeting another country. It looks like an operation to promote a major multinational's interests and to do it against a European state. According to the research, this cluster of accounts leaned on techniques used in other notable influence campaigns. This pro-Huawei network, for instance, sought to cloak its activities by using fake, computer-generated profile pictures through an artificial intelligence technique known as generative adversarial networks. Also worth noting that the inauthentic network had several overlaps with Huawei executives. Several Huawei executives' accounts systematically amplified the fake pro-Huawei and ZTE campaign, for instance, and in some cases, the executives retweeted posts from multiple fake accounts in the network. On at least 2 occasions, the network also shared articles that Huawei had sponsored. A netizen shared that, according to a recent report from Cardiff University, a sophisticated China-linked social media operation played a key role in spreading this information during and after the US election. The researchers found evidence of a network spreading anti-US propaganda, which amplified calls for violence before and after the Capitol riot in Washington on January 6th. A netizen recalled perhaps one of the biggest mistakes that lawmakers have made in American history is starting the second impeachment trial against President Trump. It appears that the Democrats are just fearful of President Trump running for office again. A netizen shared a recent article from Yu Jie, a well-known Chinese-American writer and democracy activist. He felt that many Chinese Americans living overseas are more anti-Trump than anti-CCP. Perhaps there is the possibility that they were doing so at the instruction of the Chinese Communist Party and or a part of a propaganda campaign. A netizen shared a tweet from China exile Wen Yanhai, who is also a Chinese AIDS activist. He said that Chinese dissidents should compile a list of all the people that hold claims about election fraud and actively promote the conspiracy theories about the US election. Those that support President Trump implementing the martial law, and those that supported the Capitol riot. all kinds of evidence about their activities should also be collected, and they should together be turned in to the US State Department and the US Congress. A netizen replied, then what about the public intellectuals who are supporting Trump in mainland China? Will you be reporting all of them to the Chinese Ministry of State Security? A netizen shared that Joseph Xi, a Chinese dissident currently living in Canada, who was elected a municipal councillor in 2013 and re-elected in 2017, he said, will I also be put on this blacklist? Will he attempt to rescind my qualification to serve as an elected official? A netizen shared the founder of China Change, Ya Xuecao. She said, in order to make sure that those who are seeking to report me have the full spectrum of evidence, let me just make a clear statement here. In the past, at the present, and in the future, I am, and will continue to support President Trump's policy toward China and the Chinese Communist Party. A netizen replied, in America, people will not be imprisoned simply because they have different views. Then what is the real agenda behind this move? Perhaps he is indirectly helping the Chinese Communist Party by essentially stirring up a war among the Chinese pro-democracy activists who may hold different views. By doing so, the pressure that the CCP faces can be relieved. A netizen replied, I heard from some Chinese people living overseas who claim that all the Trump supporters are white supremacists. I feel this is highly ironic that it actually made me feel as if I've returned to the Cultural Revolution era, because the exact similar rhetoric was used and promoted by the CCP. A netizen replied, racists and white supremacists are just like boxes that the radical left would essentially attempt to put all those that hold different views into them. A netizen shared a comment about President Trump, which said the biggest contribution from President Trump is not necessarily the mounting accomplishments in regards to the economy and employment rate, nor the peace deals and other accomplishments in diplomacy, also not building a border wall. But perhaps more importantly, his biggest contribution is that he helped wake up the American people, as well as people around the world, that we now all see the true color of the US and perhaps the world's so-called ruling elite. And this is exactly the main reason that he became the target of those domestic forces who are against draining the swamp, the foreign forces who are against America first, the so-called mainstream media who are promoting fake news, and also the international organizations that are against his foreign policy approach. A netizen replied, I totally agree. President Trump broke a long-time taboo in not only US but the world's politics. He helped the American people and people around the world to come to realize the importance of common sense. Even if America is and will continue to follow a trajectory of decline, at least some, if not the majority of Americans, will have come to realize that making America great again is not a crime.
Child, we will take you in. Child, we will bring you home. You'll be a flower that sees the spring. Soon a dove flying high.